Hey, you're watching WND TV. I'm joined today by the author of the new book, Scarlet Letters, The Ever-Increasing Intolerance of the Cult of Liberalism, New York Times bestselling author Jack Cashel. Jack, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well here in my retreat on Lake Erie, where no one can find me,
Well, it's
except
interesting.
NSA and the Democratic National Committee.
Well, Jack, it's interesting because a lot of the subject matters, a lot of the individuals in your book, Scarlet Letters, are people who have run afoul of the cult of liberalism, and like you seeking refuge near Lake Erie, they also have decided to try and run away from the media's eye, except for one person. And I
Yeah,
want to talk to you about an article you have today at the American Thinker, which I think is a perfect segue, the way you talked about where you're hiding right now. But at the American Thinker, you've got a piece titled "An Early Accurate Prediction About the Trump Candidacy," and it's interesting because the first line, it's from a article I believe that you wrote on June 10th of this year. I'll let you take it away.
yeah. June 10th, I wrote an article for WND, and I said that I led with the sentence: the Republican candidate. This is a paraphrase, but it's close. The Republican candidate for president this year will be that person who first learns and learns best that there is no future in apologizing. 6 days later, Donald Trump announces for the presidency. At the time, I wasn't even thinking of Trump. I didn't even know he was in running or that he was a serious candidate. And then right out of the chute, in fact, on the 16th, the day he announces, Trump says something that would have sent any other Republican candidate running for cover and ending his political career. And that is, he talked about who Mexico was sending to the United States. And he said they weren't the best and the brightest. He was sending thieves and rapists and whatnot. And of course, the media went ballistic. His fellow Republicans, at least a few of them, like Jeb Bush and Rick Perry, who I immediately crossed off my list, started attacking him. And Donald Trump just said, hey, I'm just telling the truth as it is. And he didn't back down. He did exactly what the heroes of my book, Scarlet Letters, do. And that is, they stood their ground. Not only did they take the Scarlet A, they just shoved it in the face of the person, the Scarlet Letter, in this case, the Scarlet X for xenophobia. They just shoved it back in the face of the person who was trying to give it to them.
It's interesting because the left, the condescending left we saw today, I'm sure you've seen this story from The View. Ozzy Osbourne's, is it his daughter or his wife, Kelly Osbourne, asked Donald Trump, hey, who would clean your toilets if you deported all the illegal aliens? And that sort of condescending attitude, it kind of is like Michael Bloomberg, former mayor of New York City, who famously said that, without illegal aliens, who's going to maintain the golf course?
Who's going to do your swimming pools? That's why these people want illegal aliens in the country. They don't care that they're displacing, regular American workers. I remember I had a moment of clarification on this about 10 years ago, Michael. My mayor in the 90s was a guy named Emanuel Cleaver. And then before he ran for Congress, where he's now head of the Black Caucus, he had a radio show in Kansas City during that interregnum. And one day it was a live radio show, I happened to be there, and they brought in, there's a busload of illegal immigrants touring the country making a fuss. And so he brought their leaders in, and he said, he hadn't got the memo yet. So he had raised the obvious question. He said, for years we've been told there weren't enough jobs, and now you're telling us there are too many jobs? And there it was. They know. But then again, Emanuel Cleaver used to be pro-life. And now he's, of course, pro-illegal immigration, partly, in fact, because they're just as afraid of getting slapped with the Scarlet Letter as anyone else is.
It's interesting, going back to Trump's comments, to bring back to your article and tie it into Scarlet Letters, which Scarlet Letters, the ever-increasing intolerance of the cult of liberalism, available today at the WND Superstore and Amazon.com. Here's a guy who, like you said, he showed a backbone. He showed courage. This is one of the few times we've actually seen the Republicans actually have someone that's running that is, in a lot of ways, to the right of the constituency. Where, think about it this way: the American people back in 2014 voted overwhelmingly to oppose Obama's agenda, and yet the GOP has basically caved and allowed whatever Obama wants to be done to transpire. And now you've got a guy who comes along and just it's almost like he's inserting dynamite into the playbook. And talk to me about that aspect of Trump's courage, but not only that, but his tenacity to attack.
His tenacity is important, Michael, because what he hasn't done is yield to the pressure. I talk in the book about the case in 2012, how Todd Aiken got his Scarlet S, 6-term congressman. I know him personally. He's a wonderful human being. He's got 6 kids. 3 of them are in the U.S. Marines. They love him to death. He's running for Congress and he makes an awkward comment about rape and abortion. And immediately, the media run to the other prominent Republicans, and demand that they apologize for him. And that's exactly what Mitt Romney does. Now, Mitt Romney had a moment where imagine Donald Trump were in that position. Romney says that Aiken should get out of the race. Donald Trump might have said something like this: okay, we have a really decent guy who's made an awkward comment about rape, and you're asking me to apologize? And then yet next week, you are going to cheer at the Democratic National Convention for a man who has been credibly accused of rape? And if you don't like that answer, put some ice on that. He says that. If Romney says that, he's president today, and Aiken is the U.S. Senator.
Well, even going back a little further to the cowardice and the way that the media was able to force Romney to capitulate. Remember the 5347 video that came out?
Right, sure.
Imagine that's Trump that gives that private speech to some of his key donors.
Right. Yeah, Trump just gets up and says, yeah, I'm telling you the truth. 47% of the people in the United States are in one way or another indebted to the government, either as recipients of actual direct benefits or as the people who distribute the benefits. They're not likely to vote for me. I want the other 53. I want all of them. That's all he has to say. Rather than backing off, apologizing. Every time you apologize, they're not satisfied with an apology. The neo-Puritans, they want you to grovel. And once you grovel, they know they got you, then they just want you out. That way they can go after someone else just as big a target as you,
Well, we saw this with Paula Deen, who groveled.
Right.
And corporations dropped her. We saw this with, what's the gentleman's name who used to own the Clippers, who the NBA forced out? Donald Sterling.
You should have slapped him with the Scarlet A. The sin is he's cheating on his wife of 60 years, however long he's been married. And that's irrelevant. What he did is they teased out of him some comment about black men and his mistress. And they couldn't even quote him because it was so teased out. It was done illegally anyhow. And they strip him of his team. So
Right. Yeah.
All they needed to do was what Phil Robertson did of Duck Dynasty fame. Just stand up there and say, no, you want to get rid of our show? Then the family said, then you want to get rid of Phil? No. Yeah, you get rid of all of us. Your best rated show on TV is off the air. Bam. Or what a classic was when they tried to slap a Scarlet S on Clarence Thomas in the Senate and the hearings when he was being nominated. It was the best political theater of that era. And everyone expected Thomas to roll over, kind of meekly apologize, and he probably would have lost, not been nominated, but by a close margin and be respectful. He just got totally up in their face, and he used his blackness as his weapon to attack the feminists, and he prevailed, just because by his passion and in the power of his speech. So there's been some great examples. Hootie Johnson at the Augusta National. The New York Times came after him, demanding that they put a woman in. So what he does, he knew their strategy in advance. So he knew they'd go to the sponsors of the Masters rather, on TV. So he went to the sponsors first, and he said, next year we're not having sponsors. Got him totally off the hook. He took the weapon away from the Times and the Martha Burke, who was running that campaign, and prevailed. And then a dozen years later, when Augusta National finally decides to admit women, they admit the one woman who stood up for them during that time that had to be the salt in their wounds. They admit Condoleezza Rice as their first member, a black Republican. Takes all their thunder away from them. So if you stand up, your chances of prevailing are much better. And here's the one thing that's for sure. You walk away with your integrity and your honor. You don't do it as soon as you start apologizing.
Well, we encourage you to pick up Jack Cashel's new book, Scarlet Letters, The Ever-Increasing Intolerance of the Cult of Liberalism, at Amazon or the WND Superstore, signed by the author at the WND Superstore. Jack, thank you as always for joining us here at WND TV.
Hey, Michael, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure and always a privilege.